Please let me be your child, Grandma.
When I returned home, my 5-year-old grandson was sitting on the doorstep in the sweltering heat of 100 degrees Fahrenheit. His face was flushed red, so I quickly brought him inside to cool down. It's a 30-minute walk from his house to mine, even for an adult. I couldn't believe he had come all the way on his own. "Where are your mom and dad?" I asked.
They went to Hawaii.
He replied. Shocked by his answer, I confirmed it and discovered that my son and his wife were indeed in Hawaii. I'll make them regret this. Enraged, I decided to take action against them. I've been married to my husband, who is the same age as me and runs a business, for 40 years. Our daughter and son are both married and have moved out, so it's just the two of us living together now. Our daughter, Ellis, lives about an hour away by car and has a family of 3, including her husband and our 8-year-old granddaughter. Our son, Chris, lives about a 30-minute walk away with his wife, Grace, and their 5-year-old son. Ellis often comes by car to visit and cheekily takes some of our dinner in food containers. Although our son lives close by, his wife, Grace, gives off the impression that she doesn't want us to be too involved in their lives. I clearly felt it on my grandson's 5th birthday. I called Grace, but it went to voicemail, so I left a message and went to my son's house. When I rang the doorbell, my daughter-in-law came to the door, but she had an obviously displeased expression on her face.
"What do you want?"
"I left a message on your voicemail, but today is Jeff's birthday, so I brought a gift."
"Huh? Jeff's?"
For some reason, Grace looked up for a moment as if she was thinking. I then tried to hand her the cake I brought, but she refused to take it. The cake from this place is really delicious. The sponge is so soft. Jeff likes strawberries, so I thought he'd be happy. But before I could finish, her expression remained stern, and she sighed, giving me a look that felt almost like a glare. "Maybe you've already prepared something?" "In that case, this was unnecessary," I said.
"No. Sweets cause cavities, so we don't let Jeff eat them. Please take it back."
Her blunt tone left me bewildered, but I figured she was just being cautious about our grandson's health, so I put the cake away. Then I tried to give her the Lego set I bought since Jeff had wanted it before, but this time she looked at me with an exasperated expression.
"We don't need such a trivial thing. Don't you understand it will just clutter up the room?"
"Please, let me at least give it to Jeff directly. I want to say happy birthday to him." However, Grace never allowed me inside, nor did she let me see my grandson. She must really dislike me. Her feelings were so intense that they pierced through me.
It's incredibly rude to buy things without knowing the circumstances of someone else's household. Next time you bring a gift, please make it cash. Goodbye.
Before I could respond, she slammed the door shut with a loud bang. Expecting to see the joy on my grandson's face, I returned home with an overwhelming sense of emptiness. My husband noticed the cake box, my bags, and the disappointed look on my face.
"Why did you bring it back?"
He asked with a puzzled expression. After I explained my interaction with Grace, he said,
"That's going too far. You should contact Chris."
Taking his advice, I called my son after I assumed he had finished work.
"What do you want?"
"You haven't heard from Grace yet, have you? I brought a cake and a present today because it's Jeff's birthday."
"Oh. Really? I see."
My son responded in a similar way to how Grace had, which puzzled me. As I recounted the conversation with Grace, my son suddenly became angry.
What the hell were you thinking? We have our own way of raising Jeff. And honestly, buying a cake and a present without asking first, don't you think that's just plain rude?
I never expected such a response, and I ended up being scolded by my son for what felt like an eternity, leaving me feeling dejected. After the call ended, I sat there with slumped shoulders. My husband kindly suggested,
Since you bought it, let's eat the cake.
As we shared the cake, I couldn't help but feel that what I did was just a nuisance. The sadness welled up inside me, and tears began to fall. My husband quietly handed me a tissue. I feel so pathetic, crying over something like this at my age. I couldn't shake the feeling that my son had changed, and my heart felt like it was being torn apart. 2 weeks later, on another scorching hot day, I returned home from shopping to find a child sitting on the doorstep. As I got closer, I realized it was my grandson, Jeff. I immediately rushed over to him and asked, "What's wrong?" He looked up at me, drenched in sweat.
Please let me be your child, Grandma.
What?
They said they don't want me.
Jeff's face was bright red, and he looked unsteady, likely from sitting in the 100 degrees Fahrenheit heat for a while. I decided to ask him what happened later, and quickly brought him inside to cool down. I gave him a sports drink, which he drank eagerly, and gradually, the redness in his face started to fade. When I asked if he felt okay, Jeff smiled and said, "I'm fine," which made me breathe a sigh of relief. Since it's a 30-minute walk from his house to mine for an adult, I couldn't believe he had come all this way by himself. Where could my son and daughter-in-law have gone? Where are your mom and dad? Did you get separated on the way here?
No. They went on a family trip to Hawaii.
What? What do you mean?
They left without me. There was some bread they bought, but it went bad because it was so hot in the house. So I came to Grandma's.
Listening to this unbelievable story, I noticed that Jeff was wearing an adult-sized t-shirt that didn't fit him. The collar was stretched out, and his pants were quite dirty too. When did you change into those clothes, Jeff?
A long time ago. It was when it started getting sunny more often.
As he counted on his fingers, it seemed like it might have been quite a while ago. I wanted to call my son immediately to find out what was going on, but my husband suggested,
We should hear more from Jeff first.
if Chris was nearby, he would have contacted us by now, I thought. So, I gave Jeff a lukewarm shower, and his hair was so dirty that the shampoo wouldn't even lather. Filthy water ran off his body. He seemed so thin. Were his ribs this visible before? As I gently washed him, trying not to hurt him, I noticed several small bruises on his arms and legs. "Honey, could you bring me a bath towel?" I gave my husband a look, and as he pretended to dry Jeff off, I had him checked too. He was just as shocked. There were many bruises in places that didn't seem like they could have come from a fall. After his bath, I dressed Jeff in one of my husband's t-shirts, gave him some easy-to-digest food, and handed him the Lego set I had bought for his birthday.
Wow. This is the one I wanted.
Seeing Jeff jump for joy, my husband said,
Grandpa will play with you. Let's see. Jeff, you're such a good boy.
with a fond smile. Watching my grandson absorbed in his play, I couldn't shake off a nagging feeling, so I asked my husband to keep an eye on Jeff and went out to investigate something I needed to confirm. I headed to my son's house. Even after ringing the doorbell, no one answered. When I tried the doorknob, it opened easily. Jeff must have left it unlocked when he left. When I stepped inside, I was shocked by how dirty the place was. It didn't look like it had been cleaned at all. Clothes were draped over the sofa and chairs, and the floor was littered with empty bottles and snack wrappers. That's when I noticed a Hawaii travel guidebook on the table. As I flipped through it, I saw that various restaurants had been circled, and a travel contract was tucked inside. Maybe what Jeff said was true. To confirm this, I called my son.
What do you want?
Is Jeff doing well?
Of course. He's running around here.
When I asked where he was, he clearly replied that he was in Hawaii. It was obvious he was lying, but I pretended not to notice and said, "That sounds like fun," before ending the call. After returning home, I fed Jeff dinner and asked him more about what had happened. Feeling safe, he started to tell me everything, revealing truths that were far beyond anything I had imagined. I see. So you were feeling so sad that you wanted Grandma to take you in?
That's part of it, but I'm not really their child. They found me under a bridge.
It turned out that these were the words my son and his wife had been telling him every day.
I'm a burden to Dad and Mom, so I wanted to be your child.
Jeff squeezed his hand tightly, and large tears began to fall from his eyes. I was at a loss for words, overwhelmed by how pitiful he looked, and I hugged him as tightly as I could.
Grandma, you're so warm and smell so nice.
He clung to me and started sucking his thumb. For him to still do this at 5 years old, he must have been incredibly lonely. Well then, Jeff, why don't you become Grandma's child? Grandpa said it's okay too. My husband nodded in agreement, wiping his tears with a towel around his neck, pretending to wipe sweat, saying,
It's hotter than usual today.
As I gently stroked Jeff's back, he seemed to relax. He fell asleep in my arms. Watching his peaceful sleeping face, my husband, tears streaming down his face, said,
I can't believe such a little boy was carrying so much pain.
As I pondered how to deal with my son and daughter-in-law, my daughter Ellis arrived, as she usually did. Seeing the tense atmosphere, she tilted her head in confusion, and that's when a brilliant idea struck me. Ellis, I have a favor to ask. After telling her everything that had happened, she immediately made a phone call. As she spoke, she made an OK sign with her fingers and smiled.
They'll take care of it right away as a special service.
With Ellis's help, things began to move quickly. All right. Everything's set. I'm ready for whatever comes next. And so, I eagerly awaited the return of my son and his wife from Hawaii. 3 days later, I waited in a car parked near the house. Soon, a taxi passed by and stopped in front of my son's house. Out stepped my son Chris and his wife, Grace. They were carrying large suitcases and began looking around nervously. Then, they hurried over to a man working nearby with anxious expressions.
Hey! What do you think you're doing? There was a house here.
The man leveling the ground responded with a puzzled look. We demolished it. Chris's face turned bright red, and he grabbed the man's shoulder firmly.
That's my house. Who gave you permission to do this?
Let go of him. It was under my orders. I had it completely leveled. I stepped out of the car and walked briskly toward my son. Chris, standing there with his mouth agape, seemed like he wanted to complain, but I cut him off. Did you enjoy your romantic getaway to Hawaii while abandoning your child?
What?
While you were having fun in Hawaii, Jeff walked all the way to our house by himself. He told us everything. At first, my son and his wife had taken care of Jeff, but as he grew older, they began to see him as a burden. They fed him only snacks and instant noodles while they dined out regularly. They barely bought him any clothes, dressing him in Chris's old, worn-out t-shirts. And that's not all. What were you thinking? Telling him he was a child you found under a bridge?
Jeff was getting cheeky, so we just scared him a little.
Then how do you explain this? I pulled out my smartphone and showed them photos of Jeff's bruised, emaciated body. Jeff had confided in me that Grace would pinch him whenever she was upset, which shocked me.
That little brat. I'll deal with him later.
Be quiet. What are you saying?
It's a mother's job to punish her child when they do something wrong.
Grace bit her lip in frustration, seemingly unaware of how cruel her actions were. She excused herself by saying that she had only given birth because she was pregnant, and that she never really liked children. She even said that kids were just a financial burden, making it clear that reasoning with her was pointless. As I grew more exasperated and tired of talking, Chris stepped in front of me, irritated.
What's wrong with going to Hawaii as a couple? We deserve a break from parenting too.
And who are you to say that when you barely took care of your child? Besides, just as I was about to continue, there was a loud bang as a door slammed shut, followed by the sound of someone walking briskly toward us. It was my daughter Ellis, who had gotten out of my car.
If you don't want him, I'll raise him,
she snapped, glaring at Chris. Immediately, Chris and Grace's faces lit up, and they rejoiced together, saying, "That would be perfect."
I wish we'd just given him to you in the first place, Ellis.
The decision's made then. We're leaving now. Goodbye forever.
Wait a minute. You tore down my house without permission, and you're just going to leave?
Did you actually live there? It was a total dump. Backing me up, Ellis added.
I was shocked at how filthy it was.
But Chris and Grace, undeterred, shouted at me to give their house back. I think you're confused. The house belongs to me. They must have completely forgotten about such things. When they were getting married, they asked, if you're not using it, could we live there? So I let them stay, thinking that the house would be better maintained with someone living in it. After a moment, it seemed they finally remembered, as they both simultaneously put their hands over their mouths.
What about all our stuff inside? You can't just throw it away.
I put Grace's clothes that were thrown over the sofa and Chris's belongings in a storage unit. I showed them photos of the house before it was demolished, and Grace, clearly embarrassed, tried to snatch the phone from me. But I dodged her attempt and looked them both squarely in the eyes. You'll have to pay for the storage yourself. And just so you know, the furniture and appliances were mine, so I had them disposed of.
How did you manage to tear down the house so quickly? That's impossible.
When I told Ellis's husband about the situation, he found people who were available right away. Actually, my daughter's husband, Tony, runs a demolition company. Even though it was a lot to ask, Tony, who is a family man and loves children, immediately promised to help, saying,
I won't stand for this. I'll get started right away.
Chris and Grace had never imagined we would take such action. They dropped the bags they were holding and stood there in shock. At that moment, Tony arrived.
I took care of it right away because it was a request from my mother-in-law, who always cooks delicious meals. So, Chris, how do you like my work?
He flashed a big smile, showing his white teeth. When Tony grabbed Chris's hand for a firm handshake, Chris muttered, "It hurts," under his breath. Compared to Tony, who does physical labor every day, Chris stood no chance. Realizing this, Chris couldn't bring himself to argue and looked at me, mumbling,
Damn it. Where am I supposed to live now? Mom, do something. We don't have any savings.
Astonishingly, they had spent all their earnings. On top of that, they maxed out their credit cards with their extravagant spending in Hawaii. Chris, nearly in tears, grabbed my arm and started to plead, using harsh words. "There is a place you can live."
Where?
Without answering, I got into the car, and Chris and Grace hurriedly followed. I drove them to the house where my husband and I live and showed them to a room at the back. Their faces relaxed with relief, but I signaled my husband, who then made a phone call. After a while, I saw a car with red lights pull up in front of our house through the window. "I've been expecting you. They're in this room, so please go ahead," I said as I flung the door open. Inside, Chris and Grace were lying down, relaxing. But when they saw the police officers enter, they were absolutely shocked. "I've found you a new place to stay," I said.
What do you mean?
"You're being charged with abandoning your child to go on a trip to Hawaii. Not to mention, the abuse you inflicted on Jeff, denying him proper food and care. These are serious offenses." When the officers told them,
"We need you to come with us to the station,"
my son and daughter-in-law turned pale and began trembling. With tears streaming down his face, Chris clung to me, pleading,
Please, I won't do it again. Just let us off this time.
"You're apologizing to the wrong person," I snapped. When they saw Jeff hiding behind me, Chris begged,
Help your dad.
while Grace added,
No, Jeff. Help your mom.
both trying to manipulate him with tears. Then, Jeff stepped out from behind me and extended his hand toward them.
"Officer, these two were mean to me. They're not my real parents. They just picked me up from under a bridge."
The words struck them like a boomerang, leaving them speechless. When the officer gently asked Jeff,
"Can you tell us more about what happened later?"
Jeff replied,
"Yes. They used to pinch me hard."
and showed the bruises on his arms and legs. Realizing they couldn't escape the truth, I stood before them, glaring. "Apologize to Jeff right now."
I'm sorry. I was wrong.
Jeff, I promise I won't do it again. Please forgive me.
"Don't touch me. I'm going to live with Ellis's family now."
Hearing this, Jeff moved closer to my daughter and her husband, clinging to them. Tony picked Jeff up, saying,
Jeff, we'll protect you from now on.
Then, turning to my son, Tony added,
I can't stand bullies who pick on the weak. If anything else happens, I won't let it slide.
Ellis, too, spoke up.
Chris, you're the worst. How could you hurt such a sweet child?
Jeff, thank you for becoming part of our family.
She held Jeff's hand tightly. I'm glad we're all on the same page. This matter is now settled. Don't you dare come near Jeff or us again. With a surprisingly firm tone, I declared, and my son and his wife, heads hung low, were escorted away. After that, we submitted both Jeff's testimony and the photos I had taken, and my son and his wife admitted to their crimes and were found guilty. Although they avoided prison time, they were ordered to pay $20,000 in damages for the harm they caused Jeff. With their belongings still in the storage unit, the fees for that kept piling up daily, and they were also inundated with credit card bills. My son and his wife are now living in a kind of hell on earth. Having lost their home, they might actually end up living under a bridge. Jeff was taken in by my daughter and her husband, and now they live together as a family of 4 with their daughter. As usual, my daughter comes by around dinner time, cheekily packing leftovers into food containers. And when 2 small hands suddenly reached out, Jeff and granddaughter were already munching on some fried chicken. My daughter playfully asked,
Hey, can I have some too?
Jeff, with a playful sigh, said,
All right. Fine.
And popped a piece of chicken into Ellis's mouth. Recently, Jeff has started calling my daughter Mom and Tony Dad. My daughter told me that the first time Jeff called Tony Dad, Tony was so happy he cried. Not only that, but their daughter was overjoyed to have a little brother and never leaves Jeff's side. Just like my daughter's family, I'm going to make sure that I shower Jeff with love and ensure he's happy. How did you like this story? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.
Help! Mommy is all dried up.
I felt a sense of unease as I answered the early morning call. It was an SOS from my 5-year-old grandson. What do you mean? Where's Daddy? I asked, unable to grasp the situation, only to be hit with another shock.
He pushed Mommy down the stairs a while ago and then left.
I had always thought my daughter's family was living happily together. What on earth had happened to them? Trying to calm myself down, I hurried to my daughter's house. Little did I know then that I would soon be caught up in such a dreadful incident. I bolted out of the house upon receiving a call from Connor, gripping the steering wheel with confusion. It dawned on me that Maggie, my daughter, had been acting strangely lately. She seemed withdrawn, spoke less, and appeared thinner each time we met. When I expressed concern and asked, "What's wrong?" she would laugh it off, saying she just had a bad case of summer fatigue. However, behind that smile, there was no energy. Despite my worry, I regretted not paying more attention, fearing I might interfere too much. With these thoughts in mind, I arrived at my daughter's house and let myself in with the spare key I had. Inside the house, not a sound could be heard, so I called out Maggie and Connor's names loudly as I made my way to the living room. What's going on here? I couldn't help but cover my mouth in shock and stood frozen in place. Despite it being the height of summer, the living room was tightly shut, and inexplicably, the heating was on. Inside the room, which was steaming like a sauna, my daughter and grandson lay collapsed with flushed faces. Maggie. Connor. Stay with me. Though I could confirm they were still breathing, they both were unconscious and neither of them responded to my calls. Both. I quickly called an ambulance and then used ice packs from the refrigerator to cool down their bodies. After that, I contacted my son-in-law, Hugo, on his mobile phone. He said he had been on a business trip since the previous day and was terribly shaken by the news of his wife and son's critical condition.
Come to think of it, Maggie had been saying she wasn't feeling well for a while.
Apparently, my daughter had been taking sleeping pills every night because she couldn't sleep.
She must have accidentally switched the air conditioning to heating and then fallen asleep as the medication took effect.
His words gave me a sense of unease. Could such a thing really happen? Maggie had been sleeping in the living room, not the bedroom. Moreover, both my daughter and grandson were not in pajamas, and she hadn't even removed her makeup yet. Given Maggie's meticulous nature, I couldn't imagine her taking medication and falling asleep in the living room before putting Connor to bed. However, at that moment, my thoughts were interrupted by the approaching sirens of the ambulance. Since my son-in-law mentioned he had urgent work and couldn't return immediately, I told him I would contact him again once we arrived at the hospital. With that, I was about to hang up the phone. By the way, Connor said something strange on the phone. He said Daddy pushed Mommy down the stairs a long time ago and left. Do you know what that could mean?
Huh. I have no idea at all. Maybe he had a scary dream or something.
Yeah, you're probably right. Sorry for saying weird things. Well, the ambulance has arrived, so I gotta go. At that time, I still had no suspicion whatsoever about Hugo, and I believed, as he said, that my grandson must have had a bad dream. Maggie and Connor, who were taken to the hospital, were suffering from severe heat stroke and dehydration, and they did not regain consciousness that day. However, thanks to the diligent efforts of the doctors, they managed to overcome the critical condition, and the next day, it was my grandson who woke up first. Connor. Thank goodness. Overwhelmed with relief, I couldn't help but cry.
Where's Mommy?
Don't worry, she's gonna be fine. And, Daddy will come here soon. Then, my grandson's face suddenly contorted.
No. Don't let Daddy come.
Oh, no. You still need to rest. I quickly stopped Connor, who had jumped out of bed in a panic.
I want to see Mommy. Where is she?
Connor, calm down. What do you mean? What happened?
Daddy pushed Mommy down the stairs.
All right. It's going to be okay. Just calm down. I comforted my excited grandson, gave him some water to drink, and decided to listen to what he had to say.
Mommy and Daddy have been fighting all the time.
The story told by Connor was something I had no idea about at all. He said that Hugo regularly raised his hand to Maggie. That night, they had a heated argument again, and in front of Connor, Hugo pushed Maggie down the stairs. What the heck? I recalled my daughter's recent behavior and finally understood that this was the reason she had been so down. However, while violence is absolutely unacceptable, marital issues can be complex and only truly understood by the individuals involved. In addition, I had reservations about how much I could believe what my grandson said. Hugo, I knew, was gentle and kind, someone who cherished Maggie and Connor deeply. Moreover, he had said on the phone that he had been on a business trip since the previous day.
Grandma, do you not believe what I'm saying?
Sensing my reluctance and unease, he looked at me with teary eyes. Seeing this, I was deeply shaken. Connor is normally very smart and not the kind of child to tell pointless lies. I found it especially puzzling that he hadn't woken up until morning in such a hot room. Hey, Connor. Do you know where Daddy went after he pushed Mommy?
I don't know. But he said he had an important promise with Barbara.
Barbara?
Yeah, Daddy's affair.
What did you say? I couldn't believe my ears hearing such shocking words from my 5-year-old grandson. Connor, do you understand what affair means?
Not really. I secretly overheard Mommy saying that to Daddy.
I sighed involuntarily. I never imagined that my daughter and her husband were going through something like that. My heart ached, thinking about how much Maggie and Connor must have been suffering, and my distrust toward Hugo grew within me. Could it be that he was the one who turned on the heating in the room? As that thought struck me, a chill ran down my spine. It suggested that my son-in-law might have intended to harm Maggie and Connor. I hurriedly tried to dismiss such a terrifying idea, thinking it couldn't possibly be true, but the suspicions kept growing stronger and stronger. Hey, Connor. Take a deep breath and try to remember slowly. Did Daddy give you anything before he left the house? Like medicine or something? My question made my grandson pause and think for a moment.
I remember it now. He gave me juice.
I knew it. Did you drink it?
Yeah, I did. I told him I didn't want it because I was worried about Mommy. But Daddy had a scary look on his face and told me to drink it.
At that moment, my grandson seemed to recall what had happened, and started crying. Okay. I'm sorry for asking you something difficult. You're safe now. I was deeply confused but tried to comfort my grandson by rubbing his back and gently stroking his head. After a while, Connor seemed to calm down and fell asleep again. Afterward, I went alone to my daughter and son-in-law's house. Before my grandson fell asleep at the hospital, he had told me something important. He mentioned that just before the incident, she was doing something on her phone. I thought there might be some clues there, so I wanted to check it out. And indeed, my suspicion was correct. It seemed that Maggie had been recording conversations with Hugo. When I pressed the play button, intense arguing between the couple played from her phone. Then, I heard Maggie shout, "Stop," followed by a loud crashing noise. Furthermore, the recording vividly captured Connor's crying and Hugo's forcefully making him drink the juice. I knew it. Hugo was trying to kill Maggie and Connor. Driven by uncontrollable anger, I was going to stand up with crucial evidence in hand, intending to go to the police. However, in the next moment, I felt a sharp impact to the back of my head and lost consciousness. How much time passed after that, I wonder. I woke up with an excessive heat and was astonished to see an unbelievable sight. The house was on fire. I panicked and tried to get up in a hurry, but the next moment, I froze in terror. My hands and feet were bound tightly with thick ropes, and I realized I couldn't move. Someone, help me! I shouted at the top of my lungs, but I was alone in the sealed house. My voice didn't reach outside. Surrounded by rising smoke, my throat parched. The suffocating fear overcame me to the point where I could no longer let out my voice. Ah. It's over. But just as I felt despair in this dire situation, suddenly the window glass shattered, and someone jumped into the room, saving me. Several hours later, I made a call to the perpetrator who had attacked me at my daughter's house. You've really gone too far. But unfortunately for you, I'm still alive. The damage to the house was just a small fire. Upon hearing this, the person on the other end of the phone was briefly stunned, but then immediately played dumb.
What are you talking about?
Actually, while I was unconscious from being hit, the perpetrator had taken the phone with the evidence. Of course, it was none other than my son-in-law, Hugo. How audacious. I know everything now. What you did to Maggie and Connor, and you even tried to kill me after I found out.
Excuse me. I have no idea what you're talking about.
Well, you can pretend to be clueless for now. You might not know this, but there are other pieces of evidence.
Wait. What do you mean by evidence?
If you want to find out, come to my house right now. I want to hear the truth from you before I go to the police. I hung up the phone after saying that. Now, it's finally time for the showdown. I'm going to crush that devil of a man thoroughly. Prepare yourself because I won't hold back. With each passing moment, my determination to confront my son-in-law grew stronger and stronger. Hugo arrived within an hour after that.
What was that phone call about? It was quite surprising to hear such things out of the blue.
I was the one who was surprised. I didn't know you were such a cowardly person.
What's this all about? Please don't say such a thing.
Don't play innocent. This morning, Connor woke up. It was a lie that you were on a business trip. I heard everything you did to my daughter and grandson the night before yesterday. I glared fiercely at Hugo and raised my voice, but he seemed completely unfazed. With an air of calm confidence, he smirked and mocked me.
Bullshit. I don't know what you heard, but that's either a dream Connor had or his lie. It's crazy to believe what such a small kid says.
Connor doesn't lie, and he's much smarter than you think. He knew that you were cheating, Hugo. He's been hurt by his parents' bad relationship for a long time.
So, I don't know anything about that. Isn't it just some fantasy typical of kids?
Don't play dumb. You made plans to go on a trip with your mistress. And because Maggie confronted you about it, you got into an argument and tried to harm my daughter and grandson. Maggie and Connor's anguish weighed heavily on my mind, and tears involuntarily streamed down my cheeks. However, Hugo looked even more delighted and sneered at me.
It's completely ridiculous. Are you starting to lose your mind because of your age?
Maggie recorded your conversations from the night before last on her phone. I listened to that audio earlier.
Oh, is that so? Then please, let me hear it too.
Don't play dumb. You took her phone from me. And then you tried to kill me by setting the fire.
Ha 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 ha. In the end, you have no evidence. That means it's just an accusation. Even if you go to the police, they'll just laugh it off as the ramblings of children and old people.
Hugo then burst into an exaggerated laugh, clutching his stomach theatrically.
Well then, I'm leaving. I don't have time to play detective with an old woman.
Then, he turned his back and started to walk away. Wait a moment. Can you still make excuses after seeing this? I called out to stop him, and as he turned around, I thrust my phone screen in front of him and started playing a certain video. It was the living room of my daughter's house a few hours earlier. The video showed my son-in-law striking me from behind with a golf club, setting fire, and then hastily fleeing the scene. Seeing this, Hugo's demeanor abruptly changed. The calmness he had maintained vanished instantly, and his expression shifted dramatically.
Hey, what's this? When did you film that?
Even you didn't expect it. I looked straight at him, and he turned pale, his lips trembling uncontrollably. See? I told you there was more evidence. If I show this to the police, you're done.
Damn it, you meddling old fool.
Hugo finally snapped and lunged at me, trying to snatch the phone from my hand. However, just before he could reach me, I swiftly dodged and stuck out one foot, tripping him.
Damn.
Hugo lost his balance and stumbled, hitting his leg hard against the table and collapsing in pain.
You damn old hag. I can't forgive you for this.
He stood up, eyes bloodshot, and began to slowly approach me, loosening his tie. Watching his every move, I positioned myself to be able to escape in either direction, while continuing to confront Hugo. Finally showing your true colors, aren't you? It was the same the night before last, wasn't it? You got angry when Maggie accused you of cheating and pushed her down the stairs, right?
Yeah, that's right. She was nagging so much, I couldn't stand it.
And you deliberately switched the air conditioner to heating, didn't you?
That's right, I did it. Before that, I secretly put sleeping pills in her drink, so I expected her to sleep until morning.
You coward. Why would you do that? If you hated Maggie so much, you should have just divorced her. Inside my heart, intense sadness swirled. My precious daughter had been treated like trash, and I couldn't help but feel sorry for her.
Yeah, that was my plan. But then Maggie started talking about demanding alimony. She had been a stay-at-home mom all this time, living an easy life on my dime. She had some nerve, that woman.
Even so, that doesn't justify dragging Connor into this. He's your child.
I met another woman. Connor was in the way of starting a new life with her.
You monster.
Say whatever you want.
With those words, my son-in-law shouted and took advantage of my momentary distraction to lunge at me. I instinctively twisted my body, but the next moment, I was caught from behind and restrained tightly.
Should have just cooperated from the start. Making me go through this trouble.
Hugo said as he began to wrap the tie he had in his hand around my neck. Stop this now. Even if you do this, Maggie will tell everything you've done once she wakes up.
Don't worry, you'll soon join her. Hope you meet again in the afterlife.
Stop. It hurts. His grip on the tie tightened, and my vision started to blur.
Stop right there.
At that moment, the sliding doors leading to the back room opened, and a woman holding a video camera burst into the room.
I've recorded everything you've done. It's over. Now, let go of her.
My goodness, Barbara. What are you doing here?
In the next moment, Hugo seemed to forget about me completely and stood frozen, looking as if he'd been caught red-handed. And no wonder. It turned out that Barbara, his mistress hiding in the next room, had been secretly recording every despicable act of his. Our meeting happened just 2 hours ago. I found myself in a dire situation, engulfed in flames at my son-in-law's house. The one who burst in and rescued me was her. As it turns out, Barbara had been deceived by Hugo into believing he was single, and they had been dating all along. However, suspicious of his behavior, Barbara had doubts and decided to secretly follow Hugo after their vacation together. She traced him to my daughter's house. She went to the backyard and peeked into the house through the curtains, and what she saw was beyond belief. Barbara, frozen with fear upon discovering his true nature, quickly recorded his actions on her smartphone. However, upon seeing flames erupt, she snapped back to reality, smashed through the window, and used a fire extinguisher to put out the fire, and saved me. Afterwards, having confessed everything, we decided to team up and seek revenge on Hugo together.
How dare you deceive me all this time, lying about being single. And to think you were capable of such terrifying things. I'm deeply disappointed in you.
No, it's not like that. It was all for you.
Huh? What are you saying? Don't blame others.
I love you. Please, help me out. If we can get rid of her, we can be together.
This is no joke. Besides, it's too late now.
At that moment, as if on cue, the sirens of a police car that Barbara had secretly called could be heard.
Hey! Why did you call the cops? My life is going to be ruined.
What are you saying at this point? You brought this upon yourself.
Please. Please let me go.
Hugo, who had been so confident just moments ago, now knelt on the ground, crying.
Barbara, please. Help me. We loved each other so passionately.
Stop it. You disgust me. You are the greatest regret of my life.
She said dismissively and turned away. Then, as if he had never treated me so terribly, he suddenly changed his attitude and clung to me desperately.
Please forgive me. I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to Maggie and Connor.
Huh? If you want to, do it behind bars.
Please don't say that. I will change my ways from now on.
I let out a big sigh. Listen, there's no from now on with you. We will never forgive you. Never show your filthy face in front of us again. Barbara and I handed over the sobbing son-in-law to the police. Then, we watched as Hugo, now in handcuffs, was pushed into the police car, and we high-fived each other. Afterward, my son-in-law received a prison sentence and was locked up behind bars. I received $15,000 in compensation from him for the attempt on my life. My daughter regained consciousness, and eventually, her divorce from Hugo was finalized. She claimed $20,000 in compensation and $100,000 in child support. He was also demanded to pay compensation by his affair partner Barbara, and sold the house to cover these payments, but it seems he ultimately ended up in debt. Having been cut off by his parents, he faces a bleak future even upon release from prison. Meanwhile, on my side, I started a new life with my daughter and grandson, living together in my home. Maggie started working to raise Connor well. With my daughter by my side, I'll protect my grandson's smile for as long as I can.